Good evening, you're watching To The Point. I'm Preeti Chaudhary. One nation, one law. It's an age-old debate. It's been a part of the BJP's Manifesto 2019. The Uniform Civil Codes debate has been sparked yet again by the RSS this time, where they say it's time now to have a public debate. It's up to the government to decide whether or not they want to, get in a bill. But it's time now to debate publicly on one nation, one law. Many political analysts in this feel that this is BJP's way of now bringing in the Uniform Civil Code right before the big Bengal blowout, the elections in 2021. Article 370 removed. Ram Mandir promise kept. After two promises fulfilled by the BJP, the promise of one nation, one law remains, and the chorus for a uniform civil code has got louder. The RSS has now sought a public debate on the uniform civil code, but left it to the government to decide whether it should bring a bill on it. Speaking on RSS Foundation Day, its Joint General Secretary Dattaraya Hosable said, "It is for the government to decide whether it is a good time or not. We have to educate people about it first." Adding, there should be a proper public debate about the Uniform Civil Code. And the debate is once again rife. After striking off Triple Talaq, Article 370, keeping the promise of Ram Mandir and Citizens Amendment Act, will Uniform Civil Code be next, especially before the big Bengal election blowout next year?
लोकतंत्र में हर किसी को अपने विचार बात रखने का अधिकार है और निश्चित तौर पर जो बात रखने का अधिकार है वो हर किसी को है।
हमने कभी हमारा एजेंडा छुपाया नहीं ना। हम कांग्रेस एनसीपी के साथ सरकार में है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि हमने हमारा जो विचार थी, हमारी विचारधारा थी, हमारी जो भूमिका रही उसमें कुछ बदलाव किया है। समान नागरिक कानून, कॉमन सिविल कोड, इस देश की जरूरत है।
Uniform Civil Code here refers to a single law applicable to all citizens of India in their personal matters such as marriage, divorce, custody, adoption and inheritance. It is intended to replace the system of fragmented personal laws. In theory, it will provide equal status to all citizens, irrespective of community or religion. However, even though it reinforces equality before law, the idea of UCC clash with the rights to freedom of religion. Separate personal laws are one of the many ways in which people across India exercise their right to practice their own religion, which has been particularly important for minorities. The UCC could become a tool to erode that very right. The history of the Uniform Civil Code in the country is a complex one, highly sensitive. It was first driven by women activists and the need for equality. The implementation of it would be complex and sensitive. Bureau Report, India Today. So the question is, can a consensus be reached on the Uniform Civil Code? Legally, is it even possible to bring in the Uniform Civil Code? The fact is, a debate is now on. Joining me this evening is Rakesh Sinha, Rajya Sabha MP. I also have Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate. Soon I'll be joined by Atikur Rahman. He's an Islamic scholar. Mr. Sinha, I'd like to begin with you, sir. The founders of our constitution, sir, said that eventually, Mr. Sinha, that we want to move towards the Uniform Civil Code. Successive governments really did look at it. We are at a position today where we are discussing it again. It's been a part of the BJP's Manifesto 2019. In principle, Mr. Sinha, it says equality before law for all. But when you get onto the technicalities of it, doesn't it clash directly with, say, the fundamental right to freedom of religion?
This Constituent Assembly and the Uniform Civil Code was put on vote in the subcommittee of the fundamental rights. And most of the members wanted that this would be a part of fundamental rights. Ultimately, government of the time, yani Constituent Assembly, decided that this would be part of the DPSP, Directly Prescribed State Policy. That is a moral precept to any existing government. What is the Uniform Civil Code? It is not the interference in any religion. It is a evolved law for all the citizens where no discrimination with any citizen. This is what I call a constitutional justice and constitutional obligation, which has been the very fundamental thing in the constitution, which has been suppressed under the minoritism and the politics and policy of appeasement. In 1952. Acharya J.B. Kriplani was a socialist, who was not an RSS member. In the Lok Sabha, while debating on Hindu Civil Code, he said to Nehru, it is not the Hindu Mahasabha is a communal, it is the Nehru government which is a communal, which was trying to exclude a particular community from the uniform law. He wanted that this uniform law should be applicable to all. But
sir, didn't Mr. Sinha, I'm just coming in because, I've been extensively reading up on this as well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But in 1956, did not Nehru champion the Uniform Civil Code, especially where women's rights were concerned?
No, Nehru has dual personality. While philosophically he supported something and electoral advantage, electoral benefit, he did something else. So Nehru has a split personality, and I consider that many times Nehru has contradicted his own position. I'm coming to the fundamental thing. Supreme Court, not only Sahabano case, but later on in many judgments, argued for the Uniform Civil Code. At least half judges of the High Court in more than dozen times argued for the Uniform Civil Code. What is wrong? Why people are opposing it? Naziruddin Ahmad, who was the member of the Constituent Assembly, that time he said a very important thing. Before coming to Uniform Civil Code, we should get the consent of the community. But how long? So already 7 decades. And all this liberal democracy in the world, whether it is France, whether it is US, you are talking of the liberal democracy. While you are talking the liberal democracy, you will quote America, you will quote France, you will quote Britain. But when it comes to the core of the liberal democracy and secularism, the Uniform Civil Code, you just go to the personal law. You can take the sense of the freedom of religion. This is not going to contradict the freedom of religion. It is 1937, a law was made where personal law was protected. That was a colonial regime. They wanted to divide and rule. They protected the communal forces, and they were just pushing the agenda of two nations theory. And this creates a two identity theory in this country. And I'm last quoting K. Munshi, who said that there should be uniform civil identity in the nation. And this is not, and moreover, one thing which is suspected, and some people propagate that Hindus would impose their laws to Muslims. It is not that. It is evolution. And that's why RSS Joint General Secretary, Dattatreya Hoswale, said that there should be wide discussion on that. When we say wide discussion, this means democratically evolution of a law in which all the sections of the society, all the stakeholders should give their suggestion, pour their suggestion. It should be like a melting pot, positive melting pot. Sometimes melting pot is a negative concept. This is a positive melting pot from which you are bringing out a one law which is equally applicable to Atikur Rahmanji and me.
All right. Okay, Mr. Sinha, you put your point. It is a debate. I want to cut across to Mr. Hegde right now. Mr. Hegde, Goa nearly does follow it, save a few things because it was under the Portugal Civil Code. But having said that, what's so wrong to have equal status under the purview of the law for all citizens of the country?
Let's put it this way. There's nothing wrong. It's all a question of what you impose. For instance, can we have a uniform tax code? Do Muslims have the benefit of something like the Hindu undivided family, under which normal Hindus who are making money have a Hindu undivided family account for taxation one and their personal account? There are several things where the lack of uniformity also helps. Okay. Now on one thing I can bet that Mr. Sinha and Mr. Atikur Rahman would equally be violently opposed. Supposing a uniform civil code decides not to be discriminatory on gender preferences, will a uniform civil code allow same-sex marriage? Both these gentlemen, I'm sure, will uniformly oppose it. What is the uniform civil code that we will work at? There are two different concepts of marriage, for instance. When Mr. Sinha married, he got into a holy sacrament. When Mr. Atikur Rahman married, he got into a contract. Ours is a diverse country. Mr. Sinha can adopt a child. Mr. Atikur Rahman cannot adopt a child. We have, for a long time, we've struggled with it. Come out with a draft. Nobody is stopping you. But I will bet you that it is not an easy hashtag that you can just say, okay, you can say in a speech that we shall have a uniform civil code. On each and every legislative proposal, there will have to be a wide scale of views, and it is not something that the Prime Minister can magically get up and pass an ordinance and say that from now on everything will go like triple talaq, poof. That's not how things will happen.
All right, Mr. Hegde, I'm going to touch on that point, but I want to bring in Atikur Rahman. Atikur Rahman, why is there so much insecurity where the minority of this country is concerned, even to look at a draft for the UCC, the Uniform Civil Code?
Preeti, first things comes first. Whenever we are talking of the Uniform Civil Code, I fail to understand whoever is proposing, for example, the BJP government or the RSS, when they propose to do so, do they have a draft towards it, Preeti? I fail to understand what is the purpose of the Uniform Civil Code. Yes, you can bring in the Uniform Civil Code. I challenge, Rakesh Sinha ji, that if you are so concerned with gender justice and gender equality, I bet you will have to take all the Quranic laws. You cannot skip whatever is positive in whatever religion it's coming from. So I bet the Quran is based on gender justice and gender equality. Maybe in the years to come, the ulemas and the clerics, they might have misused the dictates of the Quran. But herein, when you are talking of the Uniform Civil Code, I am completely agreeing with Sanjay Hegde ji. Where is the draft proposal? You bringing the draft proposal, you tell all the communities to come on one table, we can have a talk. But beyond a draft resolution, without a draft resolution, every time to whip up passions, UCC is used just to say that look at these clerics and these Muslims, they don't want one nation, one law.
All right, okay. I want to go back to Mr. Sinha. Mr. Sinha, there is a concern which was raised by Mr. Hegde, and I wanted to bring to that how uniform, sir, will be the Uniform Civil Code. Will, like Mr. Hegde said, what about same-sex marriages? Would there be uniformity, consensus on it?
The primary thing is that consensus, and that consensus was built up in the Constituent Assembly, that this should be, our ideal is the Uniform Civil Code. It is not the innovation of the Bharatiya Janata Party or the RSS headquarters Nagpur. It is the innovation of our own Constituent Assembly. Hegde had all the right and all the moral position to contradict the Constituent Assembly and reject the consensus achieved in the Constituent Assembly. Only division was that whether it should be the part of the fundamental rights chapter or not. And there was voting, and 5:4 the voting in that subcommittee. 5 people favored that no, it should not be the part, and 4 people favored that it should be part of the fundamental rights chapter. This is the historical fact you cannot deny. And I quoted Naziruddin Ahmad, who said that no, there should be Uniform Civil Code, but before that we should build up the consensus in the minority committee. Hasrat Mohani also said the same thing. So you are contradicting your own people, your own apologists who pleaded for that with some conditions. Second thing, important thing, nobody is going to impose anything. What I say about the succession, about the about the marriage, about the divorce, the succession, all these things, they should be evolved. When I say evolved, that does not mean what Atikur Rahman believes I will contradict, or what I believe I will. In Uniform Civil Code, suppose some law is made, there can be 4 alternatives. Why do you go for that? There should be dictatorial law. There's no dictatorial law. We are part of the civil society. Okay. Our purpose is the constitutional justice. Moreover, we are not governed by the Quran or Manusmriti. We are very clear. We are governed by our Manusmriti, is our constitution. Okay. And we are governed by the constitution. We love constitution. We have obligation for the constitution. We internalize the constitution. Only the pseudo-secularists and Islamists, merge together when the question of secularization of our civil society comes before us. That's why you will find that Mr. Hegde and Mr. Atikur Rahman are on the same plane, directly or indirectly.
Well, it's interesting because each of you are looking at calling the other one on the same plane, but the fact about how uniform will it be with other sections and inclusive where everyone in society is concerned, there's still a huge question mark in that. Mr. Hegde, you wanted to come in.
See, the Constitution and the Constituent Assembly was a product of consensus. It was not that everybody was on the same page. Dr. Ambedkar was invited by A. Gandhi to be on the Constituent Assembly even after his original seat went away to Pakistan. Those who fail to take along a nation by consensus and those who think that it can be a matter of diktat will find that it is very difficult to carry on a society or a nation that way. I have no problem whatsoever with a consensus being worked out. You will notice that Mr. Sinha has very carefully kept away from the question of a uniform tax code. He's kept away from the question of same-sex marriage. There Mr. Sinha and Mr. Rahman will be on the same page. They will say no, 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 no. This is a modern country. We may be an ancient civilization. What holds together this modern country is a constitution crafted on various compromises.
Okay.
Whether you want to break apart that compromise just because you are in a electoral majority currently, and whether that would long sustain, these are questions which are way beyond a 20-minute debate on a channel.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that, Mr. Hegde, because we've reached the end of that 20-minute debate. But I appreciate both of you for joining us. At least we did, we did talk about it. But I know Atikur Rahman, you want to come in. I'll give you 10 seconds, sir. Would you welcome at least a draft of the UCC?
Yes, of course, draft should be there. In fact, if you want a larger consensus, without a draft, you cannot have a consensus. And besides, Mr. Hegde, I am not a cleric, sir. You know, even if same marriages are allowed in a uniform civil code, I as a Muslim will have to accept it because this country
I know
is
everyone
not a
wants to
Muslim
come in.
country.
Okay, I need to close this show. Mr. Sinha, I'm really, I apologize. I need to close this show, and that's the sad part because Mr. Hegde also finished with the point that there's only a 20-minute debate. With that, I hope all points of views were put forth. We will continue this debate because it's not going to die down in the times to come. Thank you for joining us. Up next is Rahul Kanwal.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.